At the foot of the majestic gray mountain, the mystical cyan light from the signal station shone directly down onto a giant structure, completely covered by a leafy tarp. Standing majestically on a steep rock, Lila looked truly striking as her dark green, flared skirt blew proudly in the snowy wind. With a decisive motion, she flipped over the familiar map tile, revealing a professional radar screen flashing with green dots, then brought the silver whistle to her lips, blowing 3 distinct, ringing beats. Not far away, Stomp diligently stretched his long, sand-green neck, picking up the final curved slope brick and carefully placing it at the very top of the structure. Receiving the signal, Frost and Fang dashed forward, clamping their jaws tightly onto the rope and pulling with all their might to rip away the veil of secrecy. The camera slowly panned upwards, revealing the booster base as a massive cylindrical block, pure white mixed with standard black stripes, perfectly matching the design of a renowned spaceship. The colossal architectural block towered high, massive and overwhelming. However, as the view reached the nose cone, anyone would fall backward at the sheer madness of it. The entire command deck was assembled to look exactly like a giant T-Rex head. The bright red and tan bricks appeared utterly majestic, with its jaws slightly open to reveal the entire cockpit inside. Standing on the ground, Grog proudly crossed his arms. The white daisy on his orange hat, though slightly drooping from the blizzard, still exuded an unusual pride. Clearing his throat, he raised his gray wrench high, boldly announcing to the team the birth of a brick-built technological marvel, the Saturn V-Rex rocket. Standing right next to the launch pad, the original, authentic Rexy looked up at the ship's nose with an incredibly bewildered expression. The dinosaur blinked his printed black eyes, utterly confused to see a ship that looked exactly like his twin brother, wedged tightly inside a giant tube. He raised his 2 tiny hands to scratch his head in confusion, prompting Lila to blow her whistle to urge the flight crew quickly into position. To look the part of a professional astronaut, Grog attached a transparent radar dish to his face as a space visor, even though it covered his entire face and looked quite bulky. Not forgetting his companion, he pulled out a massive transparent hemisphere. With a leaping bound, Grog slammed that glass dome securely right over Rexy's massive snout. The naturally scowling eyes of the T-Rex were now squished flat behind the convex glass, accompanied by pitifully suffocated, heavy panting. Ignoring the inconvenience, Grog patted Rexy on the hip with full confidence, promising that the two of them were about to make history. Inside the nose cone cockpit, the space was a true nightmare, measuring a mere 8x8 studs wide. There, Click-Clack was busy rolling on its tracks, its 2 clip arms nimbly arranging hundreds of tiny tiles onto the main control panel. The blue, red, and yellow buttons were painstakingly lined up by the robot in perfectly straight rows, with spacing so even and precise it was flawless. Stepping back a bit to admire the masterpiece, Click-Clack's red eye blinked smugly, emitting incredibly satisfying clicking and clacking sounds. The hatch suddenly popped open. Grog squeezed his way in first, his cumbersome leopard print loincloth brushing haphazardly against the doorframe. He settled into the main pilot seat, delightedly pressing a few blue buttons to test them out. Right behind him was Rexy. The T-Rex waddled and struggled to squeeze his massive body through the hatch, making the brick layers grind against each other with agonizing creaks. As soon as he stepped inside, Rexy's right foot, bearing his signature white plate, accidentally stomped down hard on the emergency brake system. The ship shuddered violently, making Grog jump in his seat, hastily shoving his giant friend's foot out of the way. But the space was far too cramped. Rexy's massive brick bulk took up nearly 3/4 of the entire cockpit. His long tail, consisting of 4 hinged segments, had absolutely nowhere to go, forced to drape awkwardly right across the control panel. Completely out of standing room, a disgruntled Click-Clack was pushed outside the glass window, forced to use its 2 clip hands to cling tightly to the frame and peer in. Staring intently at the map, Grog loudly ordered Rexy to prepare the startup sequence and check the red button in the back. Hearing the order, Rexy flinched and violently whipped his cumbersome glass dome head around, The inertia of the head turn caused his massive body to twist uncontrollably. A loud crash echoed as the four-segment tail swung sideways with devastating force. That accidental tail swipe completely obliterated all 3 rows of vibrant buttons that Click-Clack had spent so much effort arranging. Hundreds of tiny bricks flew everywhere inside the narrow cockpit, clattering like hail against Grog's radar visor. Outside the window, Click-Clack's red eye dilated to its maximum in absolute shock. The robot let out a piercing shriek, its engine billowing thick smoke in supreme frustration at this horrifying destruction. Ignoring the mess, Grog remained optimistic, giving a thumbs up through the window to signal Lila. Down on the ground, the female commander blew 3 long whistle blasts and waved her hand to begin the vibration simulation test. Instantly, Frost and Fang dashed over, clamping their jaws tightly onto 2 corners of the launch pad. The 2 saber-toothed tigers channeled all their leg strength, growling as they violently shook the launch pad back and forth without mercy. The entire ship shuddered violently, creating the sensation of actually tearing through the atmosphere. Inside the cockpit, everything swayed wildly. Grog bounced up and down violently in the pilot's seat. The radar dish on his face slipped down, completely covering his nose and mouth, nearly suffocating him. Rexy was in absolute panic, his eyes blinking rapidly in terror behind the convex glass dome. The clumsy T-Rex desperately tried to maneuver, searching for something to grab onto with his short, useless front arms. In a frantic flail, Rexy yanked his right foot up, resulting in his head slamming into the cockpit ceiling with a thunderous thud. In pain and panic, Rexy began thrashing wildly, his tail whipping back and forth like a giant, swooshing whip. Entire sections of the control panel shattered, flying apart with sharp, dry cracking sounds. Watching its masterpiece being obliterated, Click-Clack's system overloaded so severely that one of its tracks popped completely off. Grog struggled to push his visor up to see, screaming in vain, begging Rexy to keep his tail still. But it was too late. The tip of Rexy's tail accidentally flicked the black and yellow striped lever, meant only for emergencies. A dry puff echoed out, and the pure white nylon parachute deployed from its compartment. The parachute was supposed to deploy outside into space, but a silly technical glitch caused it to deploy right inside the cramped cockpit. The giant layer of nylon draped completely over them, squashing both Grog and Rexy into a tragically tangled heap. The test ended in a miserable failure, leaving a dejected Rexy sitting flat on the floor, using his tiny hands to tightly hug his troublesome tail and whining with frustration. The hatch slowly opened. Grog crawled awkwardly out of the parachute pile, a few scattered buttons still stuck fast to his head. Rexy trudged out onto the launch pad, using his own hands to pull the suffocating glass dome off his snout, his face hanging low in sadness. Seeing this, Lila sighed softly, holding a marker and preparing to cross out their giant friend's name from the flight crew roster. Grog took off the bulky radar visor and tossed it aside, standing motionless as he watched Rexy's gloomy posture. He cast a glance back at the ruined cockpit, where Click-Clack, welling up with electronic tears, was diligently picking up each individual button tile. Suddenly, a crazy idea flashed, making Grog's eyes widen. He muttered that dinosaurs weren't born to sit still in one place, and the problem wasn't Rexy, but this overly restrictive mold. Gripping the wrench tightly in his hand, Grog's eyes burned with a fierce fire of determination. Grog charged straight into the cockpit, pit like a tornado. With terrifying speed, the wrench in his hand dismantled the entire back half of the control panel and the co-pilot seat right off the floor. He pulled out a massive rotating Technic joint assembly from the pile of spare parts. With a sharp clack, the giant joint was locked securely right in the dead center of the cockpit. Once done, he ran outside, grabbed Rexy's hand, and pulled him back inside. Instead of forcing his giant friend to sit huddled in a corner, Grog completely turned the T-Rex around. He carefully lifted the magnificent four-segment tail and plugged the very tip of it straight into the newly installed central rotary joint. A crisp click rang out, signaling a millimeter-perfect fit, making Rexy's eyes bulge in surprise. Grog smiled smugly, telling his big buddy to try shaking his hips and see what happens. Timidly giving his tail a slight wag to the left, Rexy was amazed to see the entire ship immediately and smoothly tilt in that exact direction. Thrilled by this new discovery, Rexy boldly wagged his tail to the right, and the ship obediently veered sharply to the right. It turned out the tail that was once a clumsy weapon of mass destruction had now been redesigned to become the most perfect living joystick system that no machine could ever match. At the foot of the launch pad, Lila looked up with eyes overflowing with pride, raising the silver whistle high in preparation for a historic moment. Stomp stretched his long neck up to the blue sky, letting out a majestic roar as the signal to clear the launch pad. Far off in the distance, Click-Clack backed away to a safe distance, raising both clip hands to the sky as if praying for a smooth flight. Lila's whistle sounded out the life or death countdown beats. 3, 2, 1, launch! Frost and Fang dashed over like lightning, using their powerful jaws to yank out the 2 safety pins at the base of the ship. An earth-shaking boom echoed out as thousands of vibrant bricks representing flames poured fiercely from the exhaust system. The ship slowly lifted itself off the launch pad, carrying a force that shook the entire surface of the Ice Age. Inside the cockpit, Grog sat relaxed in the co-pilot's position, yielding the main stage to Rexy. Standing tall and majestic in the center, the T-Rex captain used his powerful tail to steer with absolute confidence. The marvel, shaped like a dinosaur head, bravely tore through the fog, soaring up into the night sky, sparkling with tens of thousands of brilliant stars. As the smoke and dust from the launch gradually faded, the launch pad was revealed with a scorched black surface, haphazardly scattered with countless glowing red flame bricks. Instantly, Click-Clack charged in, shrieking ear-piercing error alerts while busily picking up each scorching, hot flame piece. With its incurable obsession for perfection, the robot meticulously arranged them into a 10 by 10 square, shifting color from yellow to orange with unbelievable precision. Watching that ironic scene, Lila could only shake her head and laugh, blowing a long, echoing whistle to close out an unimaginable adventure of the magical bricks.